All right, how's everybody doing today? Hotep, hey, this is Michael Imhotep, founder of the African History Network, host of the African History Network show. I'm a talk show host, researcher, lecturer, writer, and historian. So it is Friday, May 28th, 2021, and we are live. So I wanted to come on for a few minutes and talk about the Saturday online course that I teach, 12 noon to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. So I wanted to give a brief preview of the online course. So it meets on Saturdays, 12 noon to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Next class is Saturday, May 29th. 2021. It's a 9-week online course that I teach, and we deal with thousands of years of history, and we deal with what led up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. And we try to deal with this information as much as we can chronologically, okay? And, we deal with a timeline of history, dealing with about 5 million years of history. So I want to do a brief overview here. How's everybody doing? Share this broadcast on your social media platforms. Invite your friends to tune in as well. So I do a PowerPoint presentation. We have book references, articles, video clips. It's a ton of information here. Okay. So I want to do I'm going to pull up the PowerPoint presentation here so we can do a brief overview. Let's flip over to this. All right, so last Saturday, our guest speaker was archaeologist Sister Nubia Wartford. She is an archaeologist from Detroit, and she travels to the Sudan and does archaeological digs. So we do the class live. All the sessions are recorded, so you can go back and watch it over and over again. Okay, so as soon as you register, you can watch last week's class. And we have the information also at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. The class is regularly $130. It was on sale for $80. Since we're about halfway through the class, price has been reduced to $60. Okay, so as soon as you register, you can watch the first few classes. You'll be ready for Saturday, May 29th. We talked about Amana Shikito, one of the African female rulers of Nubia, Amana Shikito, also known as the Kendaki of Merowe, where the queens, this dealt with ancient Kush, because when we had Sister Nubia speak to the class, we talked about the origins of ancient Kush and African queens of antiquity. And we talked about the Kendakis, who are also called the Candaces, these queens, these African queens. The Kendakis of Merowe were the queens of the kingdom of ancient Kush, who ruled from the city of Merowe circa 284 BCE, before the Common Era, to 314 Common Era, in what is now the Sudan. The renowned kingdom of Kush, also known as the kingdom of Napata, the kingdom of Kerma, the Merowitic kingdom or sometimes called Nubia by some people, is one of the ancient civilizations that were advanced in terms of organization, culture, and politics. Its capital, Merowe, located on the Nile in the region of modern-day Sudan, flourished from trade in goods many did not have. But what also made it stronger was the monarchy, largely controlled by African women. Okay, so this is last week's class. This is some of what we talked about. So what we're seeing now, and I'm going to post a link here, people can register for the online course. And as soon as you register, you can start watching the content. You can watch from around the world. What we're seeing now taking place across the country, we see an attack on teaching history pertaining to African Americans. We see an attack on the 1619 Project. We see an attack on what's called critical race theory. And Republicans are attacking this, even though most of them have no clue what critical race theory is. Okay, and they're just lumping into a category teachings about race that they don't like and calling that critical race theory. So I'm going to give you a brief overview of what we cover in the class, but we have to look at what's taking place right now, okay, in this country. There's a concerted effort to suppress the teaching of the history of slavery properly, teaching the history of slavery, really teaching the history of systemic racism and things like this. There's a concerted effort in Republican-dominated states where you have Republican governors, Republican state legislatures, to keep this history from being taught. If we look at what's taking place right now with the commemoration of the Tulsa Race Massacre, we see that there was a concerted effort for at least 50 years to suppress what actually happened in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and keep it from being taught in schools, keep books from being written, etc. And even today, the Tulsa race, the Tulsa Massacre Commission, the Commemoration Commission, they've raised $30 million for the commemoration that's taking place. And none of that money has gone to the survivors of the Tulsa Race Massacre or their families. None of that money has gone to them. The Tulsa Race Massacre Centennial Commemoration, okay, in Oklahoma, is controlled by white people, controlled by Republicans, and they don't want to pay reparations to the survivors and their descendants, anything like this. So you still have this fight to keep the history from being taught. Whoever controls the teaching of the past will control the trajectory of the future. Whoever controls the teaching of the past will control the trajectory of the future. Okay, so if we look here, this was one recent article. This is from March 4th, 2021. Mock slave auctions, racist lessons, how U.S. history class often traumatizes, dehumanizes Black students. And every February, I talk about what I call slave lessons gone wrong, and lessons like Black History Month lessons in schools where they talk about slavery, etc. And they're doing reenactments and mock slave auctions and things like this that traumatize African American students. Okay. And this is how you don't want to teach the history. But this article here from USA Today gives some insight into that. And there's a study from the Southern Poverty Law Center that I oftentimes reference, and we talk about it some in the online course. There's a study from the Southern Poverty Law Center called Teaching Hard History American Slavery, Teaching Hard History American Slavery. And this study deals with how the history of slavery is being incorrectly taught in schools all across the country. Okay. Then it makes numerous recommendations on how to more correctly teach that history. Teaching Hard History American Slavery. You can go to splcenter.org, Southern Poverty Law Center website, splcenter.org, and you can download it there. It's free to download. It's about a 52-page study. Okay, so then this is another recent article. This is from February 10th, 2021. This deals with Republican state lawmakers want to punish schools that teach the 1619 Project. Republican state lawmakers want to punish schools that teach the 1619 Project. So we've seen at least 12 states pass laws to ban teaching critical race theory, but also some are banning teaching from the 1619 Project from the New York Times, spearheaded by journalist Nicole Hannah-Jones as well. There's a concerted effort to attack teaching African American history, teaching about the history of slavery, teaching about systemic racism. And when we look at critical race theory, for instance, Kimberly Crenshaw, who's one of the architects of critical race theory, said that I played this clip on my show last night. She said that with the protest that took place in summer 2020 over the death of George Floyd and Ahmaud Arbery and others, Breonna Taylor, etc., she knew that there was going to be a backlash. She knew that there was going to be a backlash. And this attack on critical race theory is that backlash, okay? Is the boogeyman that a lot of white conservatives were looking forward to attack. Okay, so this is what we're seeing. So we have this article here as well. Republican state lawmakers want to punish schools that teach the 1619 Project. There was a article from CNN that I talked about on my show. Some of you all saw this. This dealt with a letter that Senator Mitch McConnell, a Republican from Kentucky, along with about 36 Republicans, sent to Miguel Cardona, who's the new Secretary of Education. McConnell sends letter to Education Secretary demanding removal of the 1619 Project from federal grant programs. They don't want federal grant money to go to schools or school districts that will teach from the 1619 Project. Okay, what is it that you are afraid of, Moscow Mitch? What is it that you're afraid of? Okay, and you know they say that teaching, you know, the project is divisive and different things like this, right? They don't want the history taught. McConnell claims these programs, such as the 1619 Project, reorient the view of American history, quote, on their intended purposes toward a politicized and divisive agenda. Okay. So once again, we see this continue to happen. We see efforts to suppress the history and keep this history from being taught, especially when you talk about systemic racism. Okay, let's continue here. I want to go back to the PowerPoint presentation. And then, you know, talking about Tulsa, we see that the governor, Governor Kevin Stitt, he just signed into law a bill that bans teaching critical race theory. Now, he says it doesn't ban teaching about the history of slavery, but they really don't want to teach about systemic racism and things like that. And he said it doesn't ban teaching about the history of the Tulsa Massacre. But you have to talk about white supremacy and systemic racism and things like this to talk about the Tulsa Massacre. Okay. If you want to do it properly. Oklahoma governor signs ban on teaching critical race theory. Oklahoma public school teachers will be prohibited from teaching certain concepts of race and racism under a bill signed into law by Governor Kevin Stitt. He's the governor of Oklahoma. Okay, this is where Tulsa is. This is where you're having this 100th commemoration of the Tulsa Race Massacre. And this is a GOP-backed bill that prohibits teaching so-called critical race theory. Most Republicans can't tell you what it is. He signed this bill into law. This was Friday, May 7th. And Governor Kevin Stitt said in a video on Twitter, "Now more than ever, we need policies that bring us together, not rip us apart. As governor, I firmly believe that not 1 cent of taxpayer money should be used to define and divide young Oklahomans about their race or sex. That is what this bill upholds for public education." Okay. It's interesting that Governor Kevin Stitt is not advocating for reparations for the survivors and descendants of the Tulsa Race Massacre. See, once again, there's a concerted effort to attack teaching this history. Okay. So let me continue. Let's look at some of what we cover in the online course. This is a 9-week online course that I teach. Teaching on Saturdays, 12 noon to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Maafa, understanding the transatlantic slave trade, what they didn't teach you in school. How's everybody doing? All right. This is Teaching Hard History of American Slavery. This is the study I was just talking about, so you can download that from the Southern Poverty Law Center. And I first found out about this study. There was an article from, we talk about the study in the class. There was an article from theatlantic.com from February 2018 called What Kids Are Really Learning About Slavery. What Kids Are Really Learning About Slavery. And This article talks about the study, and it says a new report finds that the topic of slavery is mistaught and often sentimentalized, and students are alarmingly misinformed as a result. And one of the things they talk about in the study is that they did a survey of 1,000 12th graders across the country, and they found that only 8% of 12th graders surveyed could identify slavery as the main cause of the Civil War. Only 8%. Fewer than 1/3, or only 32%, could correctly name the 13th Amendment as the formal end to U.S. slavery, with a slightly higher share, only 35%, choosing the Emancipation Proclamation of January 1st, 1863, and fewer than half, or 46%, identified the Middle Passage as the transport of enslaved Africans across the Atlantic Ocean to North America. You can read this article in full, What Kids Are Really Learning About Slavery, from the Atlantic.com, February 1st, 2018. Okay. All right. So here's some of what we deal with in the online course. We deal with ancient African history. We deal with the transatlantic slave trade. We deal with different periods of time. What was the transatlantic slave trade? What were some of the events that led up to the transatlantic slave trade starting? What role did Christopher Columbus play in the transatlantic slave trade? Because Columbus is crucial to the spread of the transatlantic slave trade. He's crucial to those 4 voyages that Columbus went on, starting August 3rd, 1492, when he set sail on the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria. This is crucial for the spread of European powers, the spread of capitalism, racism, the exploitation of indigenous people. Because and also it's important to understand that Columbus never came to the land that we call the United States of America. Columbus never came to the land that we call the United States of America. The closest he came here was Cuba, which is 90 miles away, about 90 miles away. Okay. He's going into the Caribbean. He's going to Haiti and Jamaica and Cuba, Puerto Rico, Honduras, Panama. The land we call the United States of America, Columbus never comes to this land. Okay. Which is extremely important to understand as well. All right. So we talk about what were some of the events that led up to the transatlantic slave trade starting. And we go through a timeline of history as well, going over tens of thousands of years of history and going through leading up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place and better understanding it. Because all this history impacts what's taking place today. The discussions taking place today, the laws and policies that are being passed, the policies being suppressed, the attacks on African Americans, all of this is connected. When did Africans first come to the U.S. as slaves? All right, as enslaved Africans. And we talk about 1619 a lot, but the Spanish were taking Africans into the territory we call South Carolina in 1526. This is 93 years before 1619. But then also African people were in this land going back tens of thousands of years ago. And we deal with this in the class as well. This is what Dr. David Imhotep talks about in his book, The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence. The first Americans were Africans, documented evidence, because this was our land stolen from us. These were the Khoisan. The Khoisan come from Southern Africa. They have the oldest DNA on the planet. There's evidence of them being in South Carolina dating back at least 51,700 years ago. There was a big discovery made in South Carolina in 2004 by Dr. Albert Goodyear. And Dr. Albert Goodyear is a archaeologist he's a professor of archaeology at the University of South Carolina. And there was a discovery. I'll show you this information in a minute. There was a discovery made in Allendale County, South Carolina. And it showed they found 13 different types of evidence, thoroughly documenting an African presence, dating back at least 51,700 years ago. at least 51,700 years ago. So now, this is not saying the transatlantic slave trade did not happen. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying we have to understand thousands of years of history leading up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. All right, so we deal with when did Africans first come to the U.S. as enslaved Africans, and who was here prior to that. Also, extremely important to understand. African people were in this land before Native Americans came into existence. Okay, we were here before the people who we call Native Americans came into existence. Once again, this does not mean that the transatlantic slave trade did not happen. Yes, it did. But you have to understand tens of thousands of years of history prior to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. Did Africans sell themselves into slavery? We deal with that complicated history because the way it actually happened is not usually properly taught. Were African people in America before the slave trade? Absolutely. The 800, we deal with the 800-year occupation of Europe by the Africans known as the Moors. And the Moors are taking the teachings from ancient Kemet, ancient Egypt, and from the Nile Valley region of Africa. They're taking this into Europe. These teachings are going to bring Europe out of the Dark Ages. Then Europe goes into another age called the Renaissance age, an age of enlightenment. And everything that we taught Europeans is going to come back to kick us in the behind. Okay, and we're going to see how all this is going to lead to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. Oftentimes, when the transatlantic slave trade is taught, they start in the 15th century, mid 15th century. They may start with 1441 with the Portuguese going into Mauritania. And they act like this is the first time that Africans came in contact with Europeans. Europeans came in contact with Africans. No. And I'm not talking about Greece and Rome. I'm talking about just go back a few hundred years before the transatlantic slave trade starts. The Europeans are dealing with the African Moors all throughout Europe. Okay. And a resentment is going to build up. You know, the transatlantic slave trade is really a continuation of the wars that the Africans and the Europeans were fighting in Europe. And Europeans dealing with the African Moors, and the Moors are intermixing into the European population, changing the complexion of Europeans to various extents, depending upon which European country you're talking about, especially in Spain and Portugal. Especially in Spain and Portugal, we see it in Italy, we see it in Sicily, okay, to a lesser extent in England, but it's going to take place in England as well. This is how you get the Queen Charlotte Sophia, who you see portrayed in the the show Bridgerton. Queen Charlotte Sophia was of African Moorish descent on her mother's side of the family, at least. Possible on her father's side of the family as well, but at least on her mother's side of the family. Okay, so we deal with shocking archaeological evidence, shocking archaeological discoveries that are causing experts to rethink everything. And when these archaeological discoveries come out, they keep having to push the timelines back. Okay, they keep having to push the timelines back, and they say this is causing us to rethink everything. And this new archaeological discovery is coming out every other week. Insurance companies that took out insurance policies on slave ships and enslaved Africans on the plantations. We talk about Freemasonry, America, and the founding fathers. All right. Or, you know, Dr. Francis Cress Wilson called them the foundling fathers. But the free understanding the Freemasonry is important because that's coming from taking you back to the Egyptian mystery system, and it's taking you back to the teachings in the lodges in ancient Kemet. And these are the teachings that the Moors are going to take into Europe, and Europeans are going to learn this information. We do with the origins of the term America, Africa, and it's so much we do with in the class. It's a 9-week online course. I'm just giving you just a brief overview here. I talk about the problem with slave movies and why we're being bombarded with slave movies and slave themed TV shows. We have the new Underground Railroad TV show. And I tell you right now, the slave movies, I don't watch slave TV shows, number one. I don't do that. Two, slave movies, I don't go to the theater. I can't watch that in the theater. It's too traumatizing. I have to watch it when it comes to cable or get it on DVD or something like that, or pay-per-view, digital download, whatever it is. And I have to watch it in bits and pieces because it's traumatizing. But, you know, okay, well, I'll leave it there with the, oftentimes these, sometimes with slave themed TV shows, people may mean well, but you have to ask the question, why don't they make TV shows of Africans in antiquity? Why don't make TV shows of the Songhai Empire in Mali and Ghana, in the University of Sankore in the city of Timbuktu, in the Mali and Songhai empires? Why don't they make TV shows about ancient Kemet, ancient Egypt, the Nubian empires, the 25th dynasty? Why don't they make TV shows about that? Why do you make TV shows and then also movies about us in a certain period of time under oppression, being enslaved, trying to fight for our humanity? This is one of the reasons why the movie Black Panther did so well, was because it was not another slave movie. And we got to see African people owning and controlling a country, even though it's a fictitious country of Wakanda. Wakanda is a real word. This is another thing I deal with in the class. So we talk about the film Black Panther and deal with how African history and culture and spiritual systems relate to the film Black Panther, because the word Wakanda is a real word, a real word. Wakanda, we see in Native American languages like the Omaha Ponca and Sioux Indian language. Wakanda means possesses secret powers. We know in the Kikongo language, the word Kanda means family, Kanda. And also Wakanda is a Bantu word. And I'm trying to find exactly which language. It may be Kikongo. But Bantu is a group of 500 African languages spoken in South Africa, in East Africa, going west to Cameroon. So when we talk about Black Panther, it's deep on multiple levels, and it deals with African language. You know, the language Isikosa is an African language. It's a Bantu language. That's the language spoken in the film Black Panther. We just dealt with that in the class last Saturday. So that film is deep on multiple levels. There are 11 different African cultures that we see represented in the film Black Panther. Okay, so even though it comes from Marvel Comics, and Black Panther was introduced in July 1966, Fantastic Four comic book, but it relates to African history and culture. Okay. I've done extensive lectures dealing with the film Black Panther. When we look at Bantu languages, okay, what is Bantu? Let me pull this up. I'm going to my lecture dealing with the film Black Panther. How's everybody doing today? Okay, who still needs to register for this online course? Okay, what is Bantu? Bantu languages are a group of some 500 languages belonging to the Bantoid subgroup of the Benue Congo branch of the Niger Congo language family. The Bantu languages are spoken in a very large area, including most of Africa from southern Cameroon eastward to Kenya and southward to the southernmost tip of the continent of Africa. 12 Bantu languages are spoken by more than 5 million people, including Rundi, Rwanda, Shona, Kosa or Isikosa. Isikosa is the language spoken in the film Black Panther that you see the Wakandans, that you see T'Challa and General Okoye and Lupita Nyong'o's character, you see them speaking. That's Isikosa. Zulu or Amazulu, and then Swahili or Kiswahili, which is spoken by 5 million people as a mother tongue and some 30 million as a second language, is a Bantu lingua franca language important in both commerce and literature. Okay, there's different information out there that different sources you can look at dealing with Bantu languages. This here is from Britannica.com. It's an easy source you can reference. There's other information out there, but you can start here. Okay, and we see this represented in the film Black Panther. All right, let's continue. So let me flip back over to the actual preview of the online course. All right, so these are some of the things that we deal with in the online class. It's a 9-week online course. It meets Saturdays 12 noon to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So I do the class live, and all the sessions are recorded, so you can go back and watch them over and over again. You can join us in class live. You can ask questions in class. There's a text chat, so you can ask questions in class as well. You can see me. I can't see you. All right. But all the sessions are archived, so you can go back and watch them over and over again. You still have access to the classes even after the course is over with. So we deal with the problems with slave movies. Why are we being bombarded with slave movies and a slave-themed TV show? We do, and part of the reason I think is it helps to also, in a way, keep us in a slave mentality. Even though that they may show us fighting against oppression and white supremacy and slavery and things like this, right? It's still keeping us within the time period of being enslaved. And whatever is disseminated becomes imitated. It's still keeping us within the time period of being enslaved, trying to fight for humanity, trying to fight to be treated like a human being, and seeing images of us being tortured and killed and maimed and raped and things like this. How many TV shows are there of Jews during the Holocaust and in Holocaust camps and things like this? How many TV shows do they have like that? We do it Alset and Heru, who the Greeks called Osiris, Isis, and Horus, and the origins of the Immaculate Conception story. And this is a deep history. This then ties into the history of Christmas, and you deal with Christ, and we do now. Some of this may go outside the circumference of some people's awareness. Just because you never heard it before, disagree with it, or don't like it, does not mean it's not true. It just means you have to do some research to understand what I'm talking about. But we deal with the origins of the Immaculate Conception story, and Heru being born of a virgin birth on December 25th to the Virgin Alset, and then how this story gets retold over and over again among various cultures over thousands of years of history. And you look at the word Christ, if you look at the word Christ in the dictionary, it takes you back to Christos, the Greek Christos, Christ meaning anointed. Christ is a title, not a name, but it takes you back to the Kemetic, the Egyptian Ka-rest, K-A-R-S-T, Ka-rest, meaning the rising of the spirit, Ka meaning spirit, and rest meaning to rise, the rising of the spirit. We see where these concepts come from, the origins of these concepts, and they go through the filtration system of various cultures, and they become Europeanized and corrupted, etc. But you still can trace it back to the source. We do it links to ancient Kemet or Egypt, Kemet being one of the original names of Egypt, and early Christianity. Freemasonry in America. We'll also talk about the fake Willie Lynch letter 1712, because Willie Lynch never historically existed. The letter has been proven to be a fraud. The words in the Willie Lynch letter that didn't even exist in early 18th century in 1712. So Professor Manu Mpem, who I've interviewed a number of times, Professor Manu Mpem has done extensive research on the fake Willie Lynch letter 1712. And at his website, he has he has some essays he's done. Death to the Willie Lynch Letter. Manuampim.com. Manuampim. Manuampim.com is his website. You can check that out there. Okay. So these are some of the things that we deal with in the online course that I teach. We also have I'm going to post a link here again so you can register. It's also on the homepage of our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. So when you go to the website, you scroll down, you see the information for my radio show. I'm on Monday through Friday, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. 11 p.m. to midnight, Monday through Friday, Eastern Standard Time. Sundays, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. on 9:10 a.m. the Superstation WFDF, and we broadcast here on our Facebook fan page, the African History Network, and my YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, my YouTube channel. You can listen to audio podcasts here. You can download the iHeartRadio app, listen to the show live, and you can listen to the different shows on 9:10 a.m. the Superstation WFDF. I'm a radio talk show host here in Detroit. You can click here to read articles that I've written. We have the information for the online course here. You see the flyer. So the course has been discounted down to $60. It's a 9-week online course. We're about halfway through the course, so it's been discounted to $60. You can click right here to register. It takes you to the next page, and click here to enroll. So as soon as you enroll, you can start watching the content. You can watch last week's class, and you'll be ready for our next class, which is Saturday, May 29th. So the class meets Saturdays, 12 noon to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We meet online, and it's a visual presentation. And then we have book references, articles, video clips, all types of information. And this is Dr. David Imhotep, so I reference his work in the class as well. He spoke to my class a couple months ago when I taught it back in February and March. But we reference his work, The First Americans Were Africans, Documented Evidence, in the class. And page 14 of his book deals with the discovery that I told you that was made in Allendale County, South Carolina in 2004. 2004, Dr. Albert Goodyear made this discovery. And they found 13 different types of disciplines 13 different types of evidence to thoroughly document an African presence in this country going back at least 51,700 years ago. They found artifacts, architecture, campsites, carvings, Egyptian writings, footprints in lava, genetic M174D haploid groups dealing with DNA and genetics. They found linguistics, paintings, skeletons, skulls, structures, and tools. 13 different types of evidence to document an African presence in this country going back at least 51,700 years ago. Now, here is a picture of Dr. Albert Goodyear. This is an article from ScienceDaily.com. ScienceDaily.com is a scientific website. They have all types of scientific discoveries there, archaeological discoveries. This article is from November 18th, 2004. It's called New Evidence Puts Man in North America 50,000 Years Ago. Here's a summary of what the article says. This is the summary from ScienceDaily.com. It's not my summary. It's the summary from ScienceDaily.com. It says, radio tests of carbonized plant remains where artifacts were unearthed last May along the Savannah River in Allendale County by University of South Carolina archaeologist Dr. Albert Goodyear indicate that the sediments containing these artifacts are at least 50,000 years old, meaning that humans inhabited North America long before the last ice age. These were the Khoisan, who come from southern Africa. They go all around the world. They have the oldest DNA on the planet. These are the short-statured Africans, ancestors to Dainu and the Twa. We were here even before Native Americans came into existence. This does not mean the transatlantic slave trade did not happen. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying we have to understand like the last 50,000 years of history. We were here tens of thousands of years in this land before the transatlantic slave trade took place. Yes, it did happen. But you have to understand thousands of years of history before the transatlantic slave trade happens. All right, so those are some of the things we deal with in the online course. I'm going to post a link here. Once again, you can register for it. You can watch from around the world. You can watch on your tablet also, and a lot of smartphones work. It's best if it's on a larger screen, but a lot of smartphones you can watch it on. Also, if you watch online, like on a computer or tablet, Google Chrome, that web browser works best. Google Chrome works best if you the course. All right, so be sure to listen to my show Sundays, 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and Monday through Friday, 11 p.m. to 12 midnight Eastern Standard Time. And we broadcast here, and we're also on 9:10 a.m. Superstation WFDF in Detroit. And if you can listen around the world, you can download the iHeartRadio app and listen live. Also, if you'd like this type of information, you want to support the African History Network, you can do so through Cash App, $ the AHN Show through Cash App, $ the AHN Show through Cash App, or through PayPal, paypal.me /the AHN Show, paypal.me /the AHN Show. Okay. So this is just a brief overview of some of the things that we deal with in the online course. It's a 9-week online course. Like I said, we deal with thousands of years of history. We deal with ancient Kemet, ancient Egypt, Nubia, Ta-Nehisi. We deal with Ghana, Songhai, Mali. This is something very important also. I talked about Freemasonry. And we see the Tekken here. The Tekken is a ancient African symbol of resurrection coming from the story of Aset and Heru. But it's also the Washington Monument. The Washington Monument is a Tekken. We know George Washington was a Freemason. We see symbols of ancient Africa that are incorporated into Freemasonry. But very quickly here, if we look at Egypt on the Potomac is one of the books that I reference in the course. You don't have to buy any of these books to follow along in the class, but if you want to get them for your personal library, for your children, etc., that's fine. Also, your children can use the online course. I would say it's PG-13. Okay, I don't curse a lot. It's not overly graphic or things like this, but we're dealing with some adult subject matter because we're dealing with history and slavery, etc. So I would say it's PG-13. But very quickly here, page 18 and 32 of Egypt on the Potomac by Tony Browder. He says the word Mason is derived from the Latin words mass and sun. Mason means child of light and expresses the desire to pursue light, which is a metaphor for the sun, which symbolizes knowledge. The term child of light or sons and daughters of light was first used to identify students who had completed 42 years of study in the temples of ancient Kemet, ancient Egypt. Many Masonic temples were modeled after the temples of ancient Kemet, places where light or knowledge is imparted in a series of steps or degrees. So the whole concept of liberal arts colleges comes from ancient Kemet. It comes from the 7 liberal arts that are taught there in the temples of ancient Kemet, the rhetoric and the logic, arithmetic, all different types of things like this. George G.M. James talks about it in Stolen Legacy. He talks about the trivium and the quadrivium, the 3 and the 4, breaking the liberal arts up into the 2 groups, the trivium and the quadrivium. But Browder deals with this in Egypt on the Potomac also. And historically, knowledge was an analogy for, or light was an analogy for knowledge. Light was a symbol of knowledge. The sun, a bright idea. Even today, when we talk about somebody has a bright idea, B-R-I-G-H-T, in reference to light. Okay. If you have a child in school and it's a smart child, you may say that's a bright child. If you have a child that's not so bright, not so smart, you may say that's a dim-witted child, or, D-I-M, or less light. Okay. When we look at the Dark Ages is a period of time of ignorance. Okay. The Dark Ages, ignorance and war, things like this. Then Europe comes out of the Dark Ages and then they go into another age called the Renaissance age. Okay. Which is an age of new enlightenment, light, L-I-G-H-T, new enlightenment and discovery and things like this taking place. All right. Okay. So these are some of the things we do with in the online course. You post a link here. You can register for it. Also at our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com, you can register as well. I've got to get out of here. See you all in class. Remember, right now, it's correct. Wrong behavior is not over till we win Wakanda forever. And we'll talk to you next time. Peace.